This is Support is Sexy, episode 481, with influencer marketing specialist Cloris, Kylie. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm super excited to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And I'm excited about talking to our guest today, Cloris Kylie, because Cloris talks to us about influencer marketing, how to make authentic connections with influencers, and, you know, I love this part, how podcast guesting is a part of her marketing strategy, how she uses it to grow her business, how she connects with people through podcast guesting. Now, you know, if you've been listening for a while, that I have a company called Girl On Podcast that is all about empowering women entrepreneurs who are influencers to be guests on podcasts that are also led by women. So bringing women together on both sides of the mic. It's a podcast booking service for women entrepreneurs. Now, if you are new to this game, maybe you've never done podcasting before or interviews where you're on the mic as opposed to on television or other spaces of media that are more common now, even though podcasting is becoming more common, don't worry about it. I have a free guide for you on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest. Just download it at girlonpodcastgift.com. That's girlonpodcastgift.com. Learn how to be an unforgettable podcast guest for all the right reasons. Now, some other things that I love that I talk about with Cloris today is 3 mistakes entrepreneurs make when connecting with influencers, how to focus on niche influencers and engagement, do your research and be specific, why you need to have a lead magnet, which is also important when being on podcasts, and make sure you listen out for Cloris's lead magnet just for Support is Sexy listeners. And something else I love that she says, you never know where you'll be in 1 to 5 years, so keep an open mind. As I always say, believe in the possibilities. All right, so now, without further ado, enjoy this conversation with Cloris Kylie. So, Cloris, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Elayne, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
I fell in love with it when I actually had a chance to do it, and I experienced the change that I could affect in someone's life. And that started when I had a company focused on academic coaching. So I was helping high school students and college students get to the next step in their path. So whether it be to get into the college of their dreams or grad school. So when that first student, and it was a student who I thought, okay, I'll just do this for a while. This is temporary. But when that first student told me that she had finally understood calculus, that was what I was helping her with. And that, she finally felt that she had a future in school and in college, that I understood, that I said, oh my God, I'm actually making a difference in someone's life, which is something you often don't experience when you are in the corporate world.
Right. I think that's such a good point. I think obviously for the customer or client or whoever you're working with, for all of us as entrepreneurs, they want to see results, especially tangible results. Like in this case, I'm sure in seeing that she understood calculus and then maybe her grades went up or whatever the result of it was. But it's also so helpful to us as entrepreneurs to your point, know that we're making a difference.
Exactly. I think that's why I wake up every morning and do what I do, because having your own business is not easy. Right. You have to work really, really hard. And it's only when you're passionate about what you do and when you feel like it has a meaning that you can keep going.
So tell us about your background and where you grew up.
Well, I have a very, I would say, different upbringing because I grew up going to an all girls Catholic school, and it was quite strict, and the whole goal in life for that school since I was a little girl was to go to college and graduate and have a corporate career. So I guess it was a traditional upbringing. My family is from all parts of the world. I have Lebanese relatives and French relatives, Spanish relatives, Venezuelan relatives. So it was quite a varied background. I did learn how to interact with different people from different cultures, I would say, even though I didn't see it as a different culture at the time. And then, it was time to go to school, and I went to engineering school. And, my goal was that, just to get in the corporate world. Then I went for my MBA, same story. I just saw myself as going up the corporate ladder. There's one thing I got out of school. I got a job at an insurance company. Same story. I was just aiming for that, high corporate position. But there was a point at which I started to become frustrated and upset that what I wanted to achieve with my career wasn't happening. People were not listening. All the red tape in large corporations. And that's when I just started to become really disappointed with the whole thing. I never thought about being an entrepreneur. I was never raised to do that. It didn't cross my mind. So I just, at some point I couldn't take it, Elayne, and I left that company. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm just going to find another job, whatever. I don't need to find a job before I quit. And of course, it wasn't that easy. It was right in the middle of the, there was a recession, and it took forever. So one friend of mine said, well, while you're waiting to get a job, why don't you start helping people with calculus and math and science, because you have an engineering background, right? I said, well, I guess I could. So then I started with that, and, a lot of people needed that help. So that's when things started rolling. I said, well, first of all, I'm making a difference. There's a big market here in my town for this. Why don't I just make it a business? And that's how it grew. I eventually hired a roster of tutors, and, those tutors allowed me to grow that business. So it was great until I decided to just switch gears and go into an online business. And that's another story, because then the game changed. The strategies were different. And, I had to learn pretty much everything from scratch. So if there's one lesson to gain from this is, first of all, you never know where you're going to be in 1, 2, 5 years. Your life could completely change. Mm-hmm. So always keep an open mind, because you never know. Also things, if they change, many times it's for the better. When I left that job, I thought, when I couldn't find a job, that it was the worst thing in the world. And then it ended up being the best thing I could have ever done. So, challenges will happen. Just say, okay, maybe good things will come out of it, and just focus on that and keep moving.
That's right. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's there's a quote that I love by the tennis legend Arthur Ashe that I quote often. And he said, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And that's what I thought about when you talked about your friend mentioning to you, well, you have an engineering background. Why don't you just start tutoring people? So, and that's what you started doing. And then that grew into a business slowly over time, or maybe quickly over time. But either way, it just, when you shared your story, that idea rang true to me, this idea of start where you are. And sometimes we're just waiting for things to be perfect. Or like you said, I'm waiting for the next job, or waiting, when you can look at what do I have and what can I offer people, and then get a sense of what path they could lead you down.
I love that, Elayne. And, it brings to mind that the fact that many people, and, what I focus on right now is helping people connect with influencers. So often the biggest block they have is that they feel they're not ready. It's like, well, yeah, I'd love to connect with influencers, but I'm not there yet. Right, I don't have X number of subscribers and so forth. I don't have X revenue. But really, you have skills and assets right now, value that you could provide to somebody. And it's a matter of realizing that and owning that, and, being confident and just getting out there and getting started.
So how long did you have your business where you were tutoring? Essentially, it was a tutoring or academic training company, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was over 10 years, actually. It was a long time. Mm-hmm. It was when I published my personal development book that I had this desire, this drive to empower people. I had gone through a really rough time with my divorce, and I wanted to help people who were going through a transition to overcome that and just to make the best out of it. So that was my goal. I said, okay, it's my new goal in life. And yes, I was still managing my other business, but I was spending a lot of time on this online business, just trying to promote my book. So it was a big change for me. And soon I realized that it wasn't that easy. It wasn't just about writing a book or creating good content and people would find it, right? It required a lot more. And that's when I started to exercise my marketing muscles even more and learn much more about this new world of online marketing.
So what was it about online marketing, though, that made you say that was the way you were going to pivot, which is totally outside of the academic training company?
Yes, well, everything was gradual. It was nothing like I made a decision. Okay, I'm going to do digital marketing. At that point, I just wanted to help people with my book. I wanted to empower people, and I started a radio show on Blog Talk Radio. So at the beginning, it was just me reading personal development books, which I was pretty passionate about at the time, and I would just talk about the book and the lessons I had learned from that book. So I thought, oh, this is great. So many people are going to listen. The reality is I only had a few listeners. I could, maybe 10, sometimes 20 listeners. I said, well, this is awful. And I was working so hard because I was managing my other business and also this new business and, creating the content and blogging and just doing everything I could, being on all social media platforms. And nothing was working. I was working 14-hour days and not really creating any results. And I almost quit. I said, you know what, this whole thing, online marketing, personal development, it's just not meant to be. I almost did that. But, I think deep inside, I really wanted to do this so I could just continue looking and kind of searching for opportunities. And I realized that many of the people who had the top ranked shows actually had guests on their shows.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the light bulb went on. I said, oh my goodness, I should have some guests. And I reached out to influencers, actually, to best-selling authors and people I admired, people who had written those books I was reading and talking about. And I said I would like to have them on my show. And to my surprise, they said yes. So I started to connect with authors and coaches and entrepreneurs, people who had thriving businesses. And because I had the marketing background and because I had been educating myself and taking courses and hiring mentors and so forth, I was able to help them with their business. So I found myself always giving advice to people about how to get their message out in the online world. And I loved this so much because, again, they saw results that I said, this is what I want to do. I want to empower people so they actually get their businesses to work. They get their message out because they have a gift to give. And that's why I always say you have to reveal your magnificence. And I help you do that through my business, helping you get your message out.
Now, as part of your business, you're not focused on making the small business owner or entrepreneur or whomever become the influencer. Your focus is helping them connect with influencers. Is that right?
That is right. Because that's what changed everything for me. When I connected with those podcast guests, then other ideas came to mind. I said, what if I, instead of writing blog posts every day that nobody reads, what if I just write posts for other sites? So I started guest posting. And I saw the result. I saw my list grow so fast. Before I had a couple subscribers, and then it was finally growing. Things were finally happening.
Now, where did you? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
Were there certain outlets that you saw perform better than others for you?
Well, the best outlet I had early on was Tiny Buddha. And it's one of the largest blogs for personal development.
Right.
Very, very engaged audience. I still get comments and emails for articles I wrote 4 years ago. It's just incredible.
On tinybuddha.com?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. They say, I found your article, you've changed my life. It's like, oh, really? Just an article, but it's amazing. So yeah, that really moved the needle for me. So I started to see the power in that. And that's what I decided to do, just to help people do what I did early on and what I continue to do. And that's what has allowed me to grow my business.
One of the things you mentioned earlier was that some of us think, and I'm speaking for the women entrepreneurs who are listening, as we talked about the waiting until you reach whatever this magic number is before you even reach out to influencers. So how do you advise for the clients you work with of when they are quote unquote ready? What do they need in order to be ready to make that outreach or to connect with influencers in your view?
Well, the first thing you got to realize is that you have value to offer now. So you might be thinking, oh, so what is that value really? Well, your value could be in the way you support an influencer. And Elayne, this is such an important philosophy to keep in mind. I had Bob Berg on my show. I have a podcast called Beyond Influencer Marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the author of The Go-Giver. And The Go-Giver is one of my favorite books. I give it to all of my clients. And it's about giving first. And by giving first, that's when you can grow as a person, as a professional in your business. So that's the philosophy behind this. So your value is anything you can offer to an influencer to help them realize that they're making a difference, to help them spread their message. So something as simple as providing social proof for them by reviewing their book on Amazon, or reviewing their podcast on iTunes and telling them about it. It's like, hey, I just reviewed your book. I just reviewed your podcast, and this is why I love it. Things like that. You're already bringing value and delivering value, and that opens the door to a relationship. Mm-hmm. So just the fact that you have an opinion to give, and you can, help that influencer, that if they post a blog and then you go and share it and comment on it, that if they have a LinkedIn profile, you're connected with them on LinkedIn, then you write a recommendation for them. Something as simple as that is value. It's pure value for that influencer. So you can help them right now. And as soon as you help someone, you know what happens, right? We all want to do something in return for that person. That's this reciprocity. That's what we all do. And that's how you start building that connection. So if you go into this whole process with the mindset of, okay, this is a person I would love to connect with. How can I help them? Let me figure it out. I don't want to ask them, because you see that often, like you talk to somebody and they say, oh, how can I support you, or how can I help you? And the person is like, oh, well, nothing, thank you. No, just do your research ahead of time. Find how you can help that person, really know what's going on in their lives, in their business, and then do something about it. Show that you really are an advocate of their work. And once you show that, they will...
Sorry, yeah. So I just think it just finally clicked. You're saying basically don't put the burden on the person or the influencer to tell you necessarily how you can support them. Do some research and see, like you did for me, a podcast review. That's awesome. Or a book, or whatever the person is working on right then, giving I do that. I'm going to think about that more intently. That's good. I do that where I'm a person that either send a text message to someone if it's someone personal, or even an email if I see something, or I might comment, but usually I just give feedback or just whatever, kind of constantly being a state of sharing. But I love that idea of doing research or responding to something they've already created and offering your support.
Exactly. And you know what? I had another guest on my show. His name is Dov Gordon, and he's an internationally renowned speaker, right? So he says, I don't have time to read my emails, so my assistant takes care of that. But I did tell her, if you get an email from somebody with a particular specific story about how my message has changed their life, I want to read it. Okay. And he says, believe it or not, people don't do that with pretty big influencers, because they say, oh no, they get hundreds of letters and emails of people just praising their work. But it's not just about praising their work. It's about being specific. Like, this is how you changed my life. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, really telling the story. And Elayne, you're so passionate about storytelling. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like it. When you're specific, then that person takes notice and they want to get to know you. They want to see what it is that you have going on. So yes, just expressing how that person has helped you is value.
What would you say are 3 of the top mistakes entrepreneurs make when connecting with influencers? We know waiting is a mistake. You could think about your value as you just illustrated for us, but what are some of the mistakes we make when reaching out?
Well, another mistake is thinking of influencers as celebrities. And there are two trains of thought, right? You have the first train of thought, oh, influencers are Instagram stars. That's so they have to promote my product. They mention it. But it really isn't that. And it's the other train of thought says, oh, influencers are celebrities. It's like, the Oprahs of the world. But, think about it. If when you work with an Instagram star, many cases is it's just a transaction, right? You do a one-time transaction, you pay them for a commission, and you're done. But that's really not what I talk about. And that's why I call my book Beyond Influencer Marketing, because it's about building long-term connections. And those long-term connections don't have to be with a celebrity. If you try to have Oprah promote your book, it's going to take a while. Maybe you will never get Oprah's attention. But what if you go to those, what I call niche influencers, people who might have a smaller audience, but that is an engaged audience made of your ideal clients? What would happen then? What if you connected with a coach or trainer who has a Facebook group that is so engaged that everybody's commenting and liking it, and then they have you as a guest for a Facebook Live interview? What would happen? So you got to open your mind to what influencers are, and just think about it as a long-term relationship rather than as a one-off type of transaction.
I love that two of things, especially that you said in there. One, before I forget, this idea too, I'm glad you mentioned Facebook groups or Facebook Live and that kind of thing. Because I think even though it feels like if you're in the online space, I'm sure you can agree with this, it feels like a lot of people are doing it, but a lot of people aren't from a guesting standpoint. So to your point, if I'm going to be on something this Thursday, maybe not Thursday, sometime soon or maybe early June, but I've done a couple of those now, being a guest on other people's Facebook show. And as you said, they have engaging audiences and they have or groups, etc. And they ask me to be on, and I get great comments and people connect with me. And that wasn't really an area that I thought about other than producing my own video or seeing other people do them. But that's a great way to, as you said, tap into an influencer that we may not be thinking of. And then I love the idea, of course, of focusing on a niche. It doesn't have to be about a certain number, right? It really is about engagement.
It is about engagement. So, don't worry too much. Even if I'm thinking if you connect with somebody who is a leader of a local meetup group, but they have the same 15 people attend every weekly meeting, and then you're there as a guest speaker, then of course that's an engaged audience. And I've done that actually, and I've gotten clients out of that just because, again, it's a group of people who really trust the leader of that group. And when that person introduces you as an expert, they listen.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed on an episode of your podcast, you talked about how podcast guesting can help entrepreneurs grow their businesses. And of course, I always say I'm biased. I'm very much for that too, not even just creating your own podcast, which you have, but also being a guest. So can you give us an example of how that helped grow your business?
Yeah, that helped particularly with when I switched my focus from personal development to digital marketing. Then I use podcast guesting much more just because of the audience. There's one thing you got to ask yourself: is your audience likely to listen to podcasts? And if the answer is yes, then you definitely have to do it. So just by doing surveys to my ideal clients, I knew that. And that's when I said, okay, I can reach a lot of people this way. And I started to target podcasts that were not only for my ideal clients, but who had hosts who had the same values and style as mine. So that's actually a common mistake too. Like you reach out to the wrong influencer and they might have the right audience for you, apparently, right? But the person doesn't share your values. So when you go out there and, give your message on their platform, any podcast or blog or whatever, then the listeners or readers say, I don't know, there's something about this person that just doesn't click.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of that. So you got to find a match with values and style and a match with the audience, somebody who shows that they actually care about their show and they promote it. So you feel good about listening to their show. I always say that, like, if you feel like you have to fast forward to their show because you're really not into it, don't reach out to that host. Obviously, it's not a good match. It's got to be somebody that you're listening to their show and you're like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm in love with the show. That's when you should reach out to them, and with a very specific pitch. We talked about specificity before. When you connect with an influencer, it's the same thing. Why do you like their show? It's not like, oh, great show, can I be a guest? It's about what is it that attracts you to the show, how you could deliver value to their audience, right? Because that's their number one priority, to deliver value to their audience, and just go with that angle, and you'll see how you land appearances. That's what I did. And because I had the right lead magnet, then I was able to grow my list in great ways because of guesting.
Tell us about your lead magnet and what that is for those who don't know. Most of the audience might already know what that is, but tell us about your lead magnet, how it has worked for you, and why you think that's an important part of being able to offer something like that as a guest.
Yes, and an essential part of it. So lead magnet is a piece of content, valuable content that you give away for free in exchange for people's email addresses. So it could be something as simple as a PDF guide or a checklist. It could be a quiz, a video, a class, webinar, all kinds of formats that you could give to people. And if this lead magnet is directly related to the message you have to offer to people on a show, then people will be inclined to download it, right? So that's how you actually get tangible results out of your interviews. It's not just about, this is my interview, here's my website.
Right.
So when people go to your site, of course, maybe they check it out for a couple seconds and they leave if they ever visit. But if you have something concrete to give to people, then of course they're much more inclined to download it, to stay in touch with you, and then eventually buy from you.
And what do you think about the idea that some people have of they don't want to send people, quote unquote, away from their site? So I'm a big fan of vanity URLs. So my free offer at blank.com at whatever.com or myfreeoffer.com, that kind of thing. Because some people think, oh, I don't want to lead people off my page. I mean, you could redirect it to your website, but other times I redirect to a ClickFunnels page or some other kind of page where people can enter their information and then they get that lead magnet, and it doesn't necessarily lead them to my website. I'm just curious for you, what you encourage your clients to do. Always lead to the website, or is it okay, do you think, to have a separate lead magnet as long as you're getting that email?
Well, I actually like having a separate dedicated landing page, just because that's how you eliminate all distractions. Right. If somebody goes to your site, and you know how it is, Elayne, there's so much to see there. You can check out all the work with me tab and about me and the podcast and all those things. So many occasions you will just not download that lead magnet. So it's better just to have a dedicated landing page. And if you want to keep your main URL for your appearances, and actually if you want to track how many clicks you get per appearance, then you can use something as simple as a Pretty Links plugin for WordPress. And all you do is you basically create a custom link per appearance. So you say, for example, if I'm Support is Sexy podcast, my gift is at ClorisKylie.com/support is sexy. So it's easy to remember, and that way you keep control and track of what you're doing.
Right. Excellent. I agree. Excellent. I needed some support on that, but I've heard both schools of thought. Some people think, oh no, you want to lead them to your website. But I think, to your point, it could be distractions if it's really about getting them to download that lead magnet and enter their email. But also, I feel like people will eventually go to your website if they're interested.
They will, exactly. If they resonate with you, if you have chosen the right podcast, they will definitely want to learn more about you.
What would you say has been a tough time in your entrepreneurial journey, and how did you overcome that? Whether in this current business or your previous business?
Well, I would say the hardest time, it was that time when I thought I just wasn't cut out for it. I said, no, this is not working out. The whole personal development thing and online marketing is just a dream. And that's dangerous. because then you start doubting yourself. You start, becoming despondent and lose hope. And that's when you don't take action. And when you don't take action, what happens then, of course, is a self-fulfilled prophecy. So I remember waking up one day and I was so burned out. I said, okay, I'm done. I'm going to cash out of 401k. I don't want the offline business. I don't want this online business. I'm just going to travel the world. That's what I wanted to do that. And then after like 3 or 4 hours of moping around, I said, okay, no, this is not the way to go. Let me just take the day off. And I drove to the coast, which is not that far from here. It's like probably an hour and 20 minutes. And when I got there, I looked at the ocean. I just walked and walked and walked, thought about everything. And at the end of that walk, which was pretty long, it was probably a 4-hour walk, I had a different perspective. I said, okay, well, it's not working out. You just have to find a different way. Don't give up because you really love this. And you've done this for so many years. You can't just throw it away. So it was a tough time, but I think I just needed a break. So I would say if you feel burned out, don't try to push through it. Like that's what I recommend. Just take a break, because even if it's just a day off that you take just to think about things and regroup, it can make all the difference. A good night's sleep can make all the difference. So just take care of yourself.
I have to remind myself of that all the time. And as I say, show yourself a little bit of grace.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, nobody will.
That's right. What would you say your support network looks like right now?
Well, it's a group of people who really care about me and my message. And that's actually a question I ask people when they say, okay, how many connections do you have on LinkedIn, for example? And they say, oh, I have 1,450, and they're so proud of it. And I say, well, if those people saw you at the grocery store, would they recognize you? And do they know about you? Do they even know where you live? And then they start thinking, it's like, oh, so that's not really what you want. What you want is to have a group of people who are your supporters and allies. And that's what I feel I have. And it's not 1,450 people. No, it's a smaller group of people. But I've taken the time and dedication to create this group of people who are really there for me, though. So if there's one thing you can take out of this whole conversation is that, who in your network or who would you like to have that kind of relationship with? And it's just about focusing on a few people. In my case, I focus on about 20 people total that I stay in touch with often, that I support all the time. Okay, every week I have a list here next to my computer. I look at that list. I see, okay, who haven't I had supported in the past week? Do something for them and stay in touch. Do catch-up calls. And then that's how you get those group of people who are really there for you, though.
I love that idea of a note next to your computer or on your computer or something like that, because it makes it very deliberate.
It does. And it's a good reminder. I mean, I even have a reminder in my Google Calendar once a week that says, support your friends. That's all it says.
Like on a certain day. I'm about to do this right now while we're on the podcast, Cloris.
Yes.
Putting alerts in there, but that's a good one to remind you. Because like I said, I do it when I think of it, but I think that's a great idea to be more intentional.
Exactly. That's when you get it done. Because if not, you know how it is. You're busy. So time goes by and you look back, it's like, oh, it's been 6 months. Oh my God.
So when is yours usually? Is it the same time on a certain day of the week?
Yeah, it's first thing on Mondays. So I know that what everybody cares about the most. So for example, Kate Erickson of VO Fire, she has her podcast coming out every Monday. And I do love her podcast. So I make a note to listen to her show and put a comment and share it on social media. I know she cares about that. She has a new podcast journal coming out. So, okay, I'm going to support that and support her with the launch like that. So I know what everybody cares about. And that's important, though, because you really get to know these people. So whatever it is that matters to them the most at the moment, that's what you will help them with.
I love it. I just put it on my calendar. Excellent. Great idea. Great idea. So in closing, Cloris, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Well, the mentor who comes to mind all the time is Dr. Wayne Dyer. He is my first mentor. I have dedicated my first book to him, and he plays an important role in the first part of this new book. Just because he showed me how I could do things if I really believed in myself and had passion for it. He was there for me in the toughest times. And it's not just about the whole personal development thing. And I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but
I have his book sitting here on my dresser, The Power of Intention.
oh, beautiful. Yeah, that's one of my favorite. So his influence was not just about that, it was not just about having an inspired idea and then just following that idea, whatever it took you. It was about his brilliant business mind. So just knowing how he created this movement really from nothing. He had a book he was passionate about. It was Your Erroneous Zones. He had a message to share, and he was willing to do whatever it took to make that book successful. He pretty much drove across the country, sleeping in his car sometimes, giving interviews at midnight on small radio shows, calling the bookstores and ordering his own book. He did whatever it took to get his message out, and he did it. Somebody with a really tough upbringing, who nobody would have thought could achieve something like that. So he inspired me and continues to inspire me in that way.
There was a great conversation with him, and I can't remember who it was. I heard it on another podcast, maybe the Quote of the Day show with Sean Croxton, but they played an old interview with him talking about just what you mentioned about how he sold his books however he could, or he purchased a bunch of them back from the store, and he called the store and say, "Hey, do you have that new Wayne Dyer book?" Just doing whatever it takes to make it work, to see the dream move forward, or to support the dream yourself, right? I always ask people, how do you show up for yourself before we even think about other people showing up for us?
Exactly. Yes. You're the person who cares the most about your business, about your life, really. So you just gotta take charge and believe in your idea and take action, because you'll be waiting in 5 years, you'll be in the same spot. So if you take just one small action every day, then you'll see huge changes and results.
How did you meet Dr. Wayne Dyer?
Well, it's interesting because at the time, I guess it was kind of like influencer marketing a little bit, because I found a way to deliver value, which was to share how his message had changed my life. So that was the first letter I sent to him. Then I stayed in touch. Like, he had this problem with his back and neck. He has a crippling pain that, he said he couldn't sleep. It was awful. So I said, oh my God, I've had back pain. I know how bad it is. Let me go and send him this book that really helped me. So I sent the book. I really cared about him, and I showed it. So then all of a sudden, one day I'm at home and I hear the phone ring, see the caller ID. It was Dr. Wayne Dyer. It's like, oh my God.
Wow.
So it was wonderful. And, we met in person at one of his conferences too. He found a way to meet with me then, and we stayed in touch. It was fantastic. But, it was a series of things I did to show him how I cared about him and his message. And that's the whole philosophy, behind connecting with somebody and building a long-term connection.
Excellent. So now, what are the ways that we can support you? Tell everyone your website or social media where you want us to, and social media, not or, website and social media, where you want us to connect with you. I'll make sure, of course, I have links to everything.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Elayne. Yes. Well, actually, I have my book out. Is Beyond Influencer Marketing. And I do have a complete bonus package and access to the book, which you can find at cloriskelly.com/support-is-sexy. Or just go to beyondinfluencermarketing.com and you'll read all about it, because it's basically a labor of love. I put together everything I've learned about connecting with influencers in this book. So you'll see the bonus package is awesome. It has copy and paste templates and things to help you get this done as soon as possible.
Excellent. Thank you for setting that up. cloriskelly.com/support-is-sexy. Right?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, just making sure. Excellent. So everyone, I'll make sure I have a link to that. Thank you so much for this conversation, Cloris. I think I learned a lot. I was able to or decided to put into my calendar to be more deliberate about that. I always love getting any kind of nugget from all of the women I talk to. And that really was yours today, in addition to all the insight you shared about influencers. And again, going back to what you started with in the beginning, this idea of starting, taking that first step. And your business, for all the women listening, it's going to evolve. Don't wait until it's perfect, because it's always going to be changing.
That is true. Just get it done, and you'll see once you do one thing and it works, once you connect with that small influencer, the leader of the Facebook group or the meetup, and you see results, then you'll have that momentum and that inspiration to keep going. So good luck with it, and, reveal your magnificence.
Excellent. I was going to ask you for a parting piece of advice. Would you say that was it?
That was it. Yeah.
Excellent.
Just gotta reveal your magnificence.
I love it. Thank you. Hold on just a moment. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Cloris and you got some great tips from her. Now, we love to support all of the women who appear on the Support is Sexy podcast. So make sure you go to ClorisKylie.com/support is sexy to get that free download that she offered to us. Lots of great resources there. I already went and checked it out. ClorisKylie.com/support is sexy. But if you want more information about Cloris and some of the resources that were mentioned in this episode, you want to get, not some of them, all of them. What am I saying? All of them will be in this location. Support is Sexy podcast.com. Support is Sexy podcast.com. Then just go to that search icon at the top and type in Cloris, Cloris. Her show notes page will pop up with the links and the resources that were mentioned in this episode, including the link of the great resource that she shared with us for her website. Support is Sexy podcast.com, and just search Cloris. So as you see, we're trying to provide you with tons of information and tons of value to start your week off right. If you're listening to this in real time, it's Monday. Happy Monday. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Until we chat again, always remember that you deserve support, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.